Delivering Happiness, A Path to Profits, Passion, and Purpose by Tony Hsieh. Picture this. Over 700 people crammed into a room, the air practically crackling with electricity. It feels more like the moments before a legendary band takes the stage than your typical corporate gathering. Then a man steps up and drops the news. The company they built together over the past decade has just been acquired by Amazon for more than $1 billion. What would you expect to happen next? Awkward silence, nervous clapping, maybe some worried faces wondering if their jobs are safe. Instead, something completely unexpected unfolded. The entire room exploded. 700 people jumped to their feet, erupting in cheers and applause. And here's the part that seems almost impossible. Many of them had tears streaming down their faces. Tears of joy at a corporate buyout. Think about that for a second. What kind of company creates that reaction? What kind of leader builds something so special that being acquired feels like winning the championship, not losing the team? This is the beautiful mystery at the heart of Delivering Happiness, written by the late, brilliant Tony Hsieh. Now, this isn't just another rags-to-riches tale about Zappos, the online shoe empire that grew into $1 billion phenomenon. It's actually a blueprint, a guide that takes us from a kid's simple dream of making a buck through the dizzying highs and surprisingly empty victories of Silicon Valley, all the way to discovering what actually matters in life and business. Tony wasn't your typical flashy executive. He was quiet, thoughtful, almost philosophical in his approach to building companies. He had this radical belief that business success wasn't just about the bottom line, it was about creating something that sparked passion and served a genuine purpose. His bet was simple but revolutionary: get the culture right, and everything else, the legendary customer service, the financial success, the loyal customers, would naturally follow. By the time we're done today, you'll understand the framework Tony discovered through years of trial, error, and deep reflection. It's a path that moves from simply chasing money to finding what genuinely excites you, and finally, to discovering a purpose so meaningful it can transform not just a company, but potentially the world around you. And the best part? These aren't just corporate principles. They're ideas you can apply to your own life, starting today. This is the story of how a kid who started with a box of worms in his backyard ended up building an empire around one deceptively simple idea: delivering happiness. Every epic journey starts with a single step, often a small, almost laughable one. For Tony Hsieh, that first step didn't happen in some high-tech lab or prestigious business school. It happened in his backyard, with a box of dirt and about 100 earthworms. He was 9 years old, with a vision that made perfect sense to him. He'd read somewhere that if you cut a worm in half, you'd get 2 worms. His plan was beautifully simple: breed these worms, multiply them exponentially, and become the worm-selling king of the world. He even fed them raw egg yolks, figuring if it worked for bodybuilders, why not worms? 30 days later, buzzing with excitement, he checked on his underground empire. Every single worm had vanished. They'd all escaped into the great beyond. His first business venture was a spectacular failure. But here's the thing: it wasn't an ending. It was the spark that ignited a lifelong love affair with building things, experimenting, and learning from mistakes. Growing up as the son of Taiwanese immigrants, Tony had a very clear path laid out before him: straight A's, mastery of violin and piano, and eventually a prestigious career as a doctor or researcher. He was supposed to be the ultimate trophy, proof of his parents' success in America. But Tony felt suffocated by these expectations. He was far more interested in carving out his own path. He got creative with his rebellion, like recording his piano practice sessions and playing the tape back while he kicked back with magazines, technically satisfying his parents' daily practice requirement. For him, money wasn't about luxury or status. It represented something much more valuable: freedom. The freedom to create, to experiment, to live life on his own terms. This drive pushed him through a series of fascinating little ventures. He ran garage sales. He created a newsletter called The Gobbler. Then came his first taste of real scalable business. A mail-order button-making company he launched in middle school. He managed to get his company listed in a Free Stuff for Kids book. And suddenly orders started flooding in. $1 here, $2 there. By the end of the first month, he'd pulled in over $200, an absolute fortune for a kid his age. The lesson clicked. You could build a real business without ever meeting your customers face to face. This entrepreneurial spirit followed him to Harvard, where he and his roommate ran the late-night dorm grill. They started with burgers, but Tony quickly realized pizza was where the money was. A large pizza cost less than $2 to make and sold for $10. He dropped $2,000 on pizza ovens and tripled the grill's revenue. That's where he met Alfred, this guy who ordered a large pepperoni pizza every single night. Years later, Tony discovered Alfred was taking those pizzas upstairs and selling them by the slice to his roommates, making 10 times what Tony was making per hour. It's no surprise Alfred eventually became Zappos's chief financial officer. It was a masterclass in arbitrage, but also in recognizing talent in unexpected places and the power of friendship. After graduation, Tony did exactly what he was supposed to do. He landed a cushy job at Oracle. By every conventional measure, he'd won. Great salary, 7-minute commute, and the job required maybe an hour of actual work each day. He should have been thrilled. Instead, he was absolutely miserable. He found himself hitting snooze over and over, dreading the soul-crushing boredom waiting for him at his successful life. So he and his Oracle roommate Sanjay started a side hustle building websites. It was more exciting than Oracle, but they quickly realized they weren't passionate about web design either. They were just trading one flavor of boredom for another. Then, out of that frustration, something clicked. They created the Internet Link Exchange, a beautifully simple concept that let small websites advertise on each other's sites for free. They built it over a single weekend and emailed 50 of their favorite websites. Within 24 hours, more than half had signed up. Within a week, it was spreading like wildfire. They knew they'd stumbled onto something special. This wasn't just another business. It was electric. Link Exchange became a rocket ship during the wild .com boom. Just 5 months in, someone offered them $1 million for the company. They were stunned. $1 million was life-changing money. But they believed Link Exchange could be so much bigger, so they took a risk and said no. A few months later, Jerry Yang, the co-founder of Yahoo, came knocking with a very different number, $20 million. Imagine being 23 years old and someone offers you enough money to never work again. Tony made a list of everything he'd do with that money: buy a condo, get a massive TV, travel the world. Then, something struck him. Except for owning a home, he could already afford all of that. It seemed ridiculous to sell a company he genuinely loved building just so he could start another company to be excited about. He gathered his 25 employees, most of them close friends, and shared the offer. You could feel the tension crackling in the air. Then he said, "We've decided to turn it down." Instead of disappointment, he saw relief wash over their faces. He told them they were living through a special moment, a chance to be one of those companies that changes history. His voice shaking with emotion, he ended with a simple declaration: there will never be another 1997. It was them against the world. And for a while, they were absolutely crushing it. The company grew to over 100 employees. Funding poured in. They were on top of the world. But then something started shifting beneath the surface. The tight-knit family of friends gradually became a collection of strangers. The culture changed. People weren't there for the mission anymore. They were there for the paycheck, for the resume line. Office politics and gossip replaced passion and teamwork. One morning, Tony woke up and hit snooze 6 times. That's when it hit him like a punch to the gut. The last time he felt this way was at Oracle. He was dreading going to work at his own company. The magic had evaporated. It was what he called death by 1,000 paper cuts, a slow erosion of everything that had made the company special. In 1998, just 2.5 years after they started, Link Exchange sold to Microsoft for $265 million. Tony became a multi-millionaire before turning 25, but the day the deal closed, he and Sanjay walked back to the office in complete silence. No celebration, just a strange mix of numbness and relief. Now he had to stick around for another year, quote, vesting in peace, just to collect his remaining money. He had everything he thought he'd ever wanted. He'd won the game. So he went on a cruise with friends to celebrate. They toasted his success, congratulated him on his fortune. In their eyes, he was the definition of winning. But as the music pulsed and drinks flowed, a voice in his head kept asking the same haunting questions. Now what? What's next? What does success actually mean? What is happiness? He didn't have answers, so he ordered another vodka. Back at Microsoft, he was on autopilot. He had the money, the loft, the home theater setup. But something was missing. He started thinking deeply about the happiest moments in his life. None of them involved money. They were about building things, connecting with friends, being creative. He realized society had brainwashed him into believing more money equals more happiness. But it didn't. He was wasting his life, chasing more money he didn't need while the world was changing around him. Then he told himself the same thing he'd said years earlier, but with completely new meaning. There will never be another 1999. What are you going to do about it? The answer was clear. He walked into the office, sent his goodbye email, and walked away from millions of dollars waiting for him if he just stuck around. People thought he'd lost his mind. But it was a turning point. He'd decided to stop chasing money and start chasing passion. This next chapter was about experimenting. He and Alfred, the pizza arbitrage genius from college, started an investment fund called Venture Frogs. They moved into a building in San Francisco, and Tony, craving the community he'd loved in college, convinced many of his Link Exchange friends to buy lofts in the same building. It became an adult dorm, a chosen family. They were creating their own world. One day, a voicemail popped up from a guy named Nick Swinmurn, who had this idea for a website called shoesite.com, basically the Amazon of shoes. Tony's first thought: this might be the worst internet idea ever. Who would buy shoes online without trying them on first? He was about to delete the message when Nick dropped a statistic. Footwear was a $40 billion industry, and $2 billion of that was already being sold through mail-order catalogs. Lightbulb moment. It didn't matter whether Tony would buy shoes online. What mattered was that millions of people were already comfortable buying them sight unseen. The opportunity was massive. Tony and Alfred invested. The company became Zappos, a play on Zapatos, Spanish for shoes. The early model was hilariously scrappy, something called drop shipping. Zappos didn't hold any inventory. When someone ordered shoes, Nick would literally run to a local shoe store, buy them, and ship them out himself. It was primitive, but it proved people would buy shoes online. Then the dot-com crash of 2000 hit like a freight train. Venture capital dried up overnight. Zappos was circling the drain. Sequoia Capital, which had funded Link Exchange, passed on Zappos, thinking it was just a niche business. The company was days away from running out of money. The 12 employees gathered for what they assumed would be a farewell margarita. But Tony believed in the team. He believed in their passion. So he made a decision that would make any financial advisor break out in hives. He started funding the company himself. Every few months, he'd inject a little more of his own money to keep them alive. When that wasn't enough, he started selling his properties, the lofts he'd bought, one by one, liquidating his assets and pouring everything back into Zappos. He was betting everything. The most painful sale was the party loft, the heart of his community, but even that was on the table. At one point, the company's survival literally depended on whether a buyer would come through. The first potential buyer backed out because her fortune teller said the loft had bad feng shui. You absolutely cannot make this up. A future billion-dollar company hanging on the words of a fortune teller. This period was the ultimate test. During a trip to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, Tony hit rock bottom. Physically exhausted, sick, and miserable, he was consumed with worry about Zappos potentially going bankrupt while he was halfway around the world, completely disconnected. But reaching the summit, looking out over the clouds as the sun rose over Africa, he had a moment of clarity. Anything is possible. He returned home and sold the party loft at a massive loss, but it was enough. It bought Zappos another 6 months. It was a painful ending to one chapter, but the only way to begin the next. That desperate struggle for survival forced a crucial shift. With no money for marketing, they had to get existing customers to buy again. The only way to do that was to provide an experience so incredible they'd want to come back and tell their friends. This wasn't some grand strategy from a boardroom. It was born of necessity. That's when they realized their business wasn't really about selling shoes. It was about customer service. This led to another bet-the-company decision. The dropship model, while easy and profitable, provided a terrible customer experience. Inventory was unreliable. Shipping was slow. It accounted for 25% of their business, easy money. But it wasn't aligned with their new focus. So in 2003, with cash tighter than ever, they flipped a switch and turned off 25% of their revenue overnight. They decided to control their own inventory, which meant they needed their own warehouse. They learned a brutal lesson when they outsourced warehouse operations to a third-party company in Kentucky. It was a disaster. Inventory disappeared. Orders got shipped wrong. Mountains of shoes sat on loading docks unable to be sold. It was killing the business. So Tony made another bold move. He and a colleague named Keith drove non-stop for 36 hours from San Francisco to Kentucky, downing the equivalent of 18 Red Bulls each, to set up their own warehouse. They had zero experience, but they were determined to take control of the customer experience. They learned one of the book's most important lessons. Never outsource your core competency. If customer service was their brand, then the warehouse, where the customer experience actually began, was absolutely core to that. With their own warehouse running and a laser focus on service, things started turning around. Sales exploded, from 1.6 million in 2000 to 8.6 million in 2001 to 32 million in 2002 and 70 million in 2003. They'd survived. Now the question became, what do we want to be when we grow up? Over lunch at a Mexican restaurant, Tony and Fred, one of the first employees, had a conversation that would define Zappos's future. Tony mentioned a customer email jokingly suggesting they start Zappos Airlines. It was funny, but it sparked something. What if the Zappos brand wasn't about shoes or even clothing? What if it was about delivering the very best customer service, period, to any industry? This was the moment the vision expanded. It was the shift from passion to purpose. The purpose was no longer just selling things online. It was delivering happiness. To achieve this, Tony knew he couldn't just talk about it. He had to build a company where this purpose was woven into its DNA, and that meant focusing on one thing above all else: culture. In 2004, they made another radical move. To build a culture centered on service, they needed to be where service-oriented people were. San Francisco, with its sky-high cost of living and tech-bro culture, wasn't it. So they moved the entire headquarters to Las Vegas. It was a massive risk. But of the 90 employees in San Francisco, 70 of them decided to uproot their entire lives and move with the company. This move became the crucible that forged the Zappos family. With no other friends or family in a new city, they had to rely on each other. They worked together and hung out together. Culture became priority number one. Out of this intense focus, the legendary Zappos culture was born. It was built on transparency, fun, and embracing a little weirdness. They started the Zappos Culture Book, an unedited compilation of employees' thoughts on what the culture meant to them, which they gave to new hires, vendors, anyone interested. They created the Ask Anything newsletter, where employees could anonymously ask any question and get a straight answer. They also formalized their culture into 10 core values. This wasn't some top-down corporate exercise. Tony spent a year emailing the entire company, gathering feedback, distilling the essence of who they were and who they wanted to be. These values weren't meaningless plaques on a wall. They became the operating system for the company. They were willing to hire and fire based on them. Values like deliver wow through service, create fun and a little weirdness, and be humble became the compass for every decision. They used these values to build their pipeline, a system for growing talent from within. The vision was to hire almost everyone at entry level and provide the training and mentorship for them to grow into senior leaders. They were building their people, not just hiring them. Their people and their culture were the only long-term competitive advantages they had. All of this was powered by their obsession with customer service. They put their phone number at the top of every single page of their website because they wanted customers to call. Their call center reps have no scripts and no time limits. Their longest call was nearly 6 hours. They're empowered to do whatever it takes to make a customer happy, even if it means directing them to a competitor's website to find a shoe they're out of stock on. The most famous example: a woman called Zappos to order a pepperoni pizza. The rep, after a moment of confusion, put her on hold, researched the 5 closest pizza places still open, and helped her order her pizza. Zappos doesn't sell pizza. They sell service. This relentless focus on culture and service worked. By 2008, Zappos crossed $1 billion in gross merchandise sales, 2 years ahead of schedule. But success created a new problem. Their board of directors, who were traditional investors, didn't fully understand what Tony was building. They saw things like the Culture Book and public tours as Tony's social experiments. They wanted short-term profits. Tony was focused on a long-term vision of delivering happiness. There was a fundamental misalignment. The board wanted a financial exit. Tony and his team wanted to keep building their calling. This conflict led them to Amazon. Initially, They just wanted to buy out their board. But as they talked with Jeff Bezos, they realized they'd found a kindred spirit, a partner obsessed with customers who thought in decades, not quarters. Amazon understood that Zappos's culture was the magic, and they wanted to protect it. So they structured a deal not as a typical cash sale, but as a stock swap. It was a marriage. Zappos would continue operating independently, building its brand, culture, and business, but now with Amazon's vast resources to help them scale faster. Which brings us back to that room, back to the standing ovation and the tears of joy. The employees weren't celebrating being sold. They were celebrating that their family was safe, their culture was protected, and their purpose, to deliver happiness to the world, had just been given rocket fuel. They were celebrating the beginning of the next chapter. Tony Hsieh's journey teaches us that business isn't a straight line, it's an evolution. He started chasing profits, which led him to discover his passion for building things, which ultimately led him to find a higher purpose: profits, passion, and purpose. He learned that happiness is the ultimate goal, not just in life but in business. He even studied the science of happiness, discovering it boils down to 4 key things: perceived control, perceived progress, connectedness, and being part of something bigger than yourself. He built Zappos around these 4 pillars, creating a system that generated happiness for his employees, his customers, and ultimately, for himself. He discovered a beautiful parallel between a happy life and a great business. A happy life is built on pleasure, passion, and purpose. A great business is built on profits, passion, and purpose. They're 2 sides of the same coin. Your culture is your brand. And the ultimate purpose of it all is to deliver happiness. When you finish a book like Delivering Happiness, it's hard not to feel genuinely optimistic about what's possible. Tony Hsieh's story is way more than a business case study. It's proof that you can build something wildly successful without selling your soul. In a world that constantly tells us business is cutthroat and zero-sum, he showed us a completely different way. The most powerful lesson for me is the beautiful alignment he discovered between personal happiness and corporate success. Most people and most companies assume these 2 things are at best parallel pursuits, and at worst, in direct conflict. You can either focus on your own well-being, or you can focus on the bottom line. Tony proved this is completely false. He demonstrated that a company's culture isn't some soft, fuzzy, nice-to-have thing. It's the engine. A strong, positive culture built on shared values creates happy, engaged employees. And happy, engaged employees naturally create amazing experiences for customers. And customers who have amazing experiences come back and tell their friends. It's not magic, it's a virtuous cycle. What's especially relevant today is this idea that your brand is no longer what you tell people it is. It's what people tell each other it is. In an age of social media, where a single story, good or bad, can reach millions instantly, the only way to build an enduring brand is to live your values from the inside out. Your culture is your brand. That lesson matters more now than ever. For someone at the beginning of their own journey, this story offers a few simple but powerful starting points. First, start your own worm farm. Don't wait for the perfect idea or for someone to give you permission. Start a small project, a blog, a YouTube channel, reselling things online. It doesn't matter if it fails. Tony's worm farm was a spectacular failure, but it taught him to try. The goal isn't to get rich overnight. The goal is to learn by doing. Second, define your personal core values. What are the 3 to 5 principles you truly believe in, that you refuse to compromise on? Is it honesty, creativity, adventure? Write them down. Then start using them as a filter for decisions you make, about friends you keep, jobs you take, how you spend your time. For an individual, character is destiny. Finally, find your tribe. Tony understood the deep human need for connection. He built communities everywhere he went, from his college dorm to his loft building to Zappos itself. Whether it's a sports team, a debate club, or just a group of friends who share a passion, actively build and nurture your community. Because as research shows, happiness doesn't come from within, it comes from between. Tony Hsieh's story is a powerful reminder that the greatest businesses and the most fulfilling lives aren't built on spreadsheets. They're built on human connection. He showed us that you can chase profits, find your passion, and ultimately build a life of purpose, all by focusing on one simple, powerful idea: delivering happiness. So the question for you isn't just what you want to achieve, but who you want to be, and what happiness you want to deliver to the world. That was a summary of Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh. We've covered the highlights today, but I'll be honest with you, a summary can only ever be a map. The real magic happens when you take the journey yourself. It's in the quiet moments when a particular story or simple phrase connects with you in a way you didn't expect. This summary is designed to give you a sense of the landscape and help you decide if this is a path worth walking. If anything we've talked about today has sparked something in you, I encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning business lessons. It's an experience that can genuinely change how you see your work, your life, and your own pursuit of happiness. You can find a link to the book in the description below. Also, if you found this journey valuable, please take a moment to click that like button and subscribe to our channel. It tells us we're on the right track and ensures you won't miss our next exploration into another life-changing book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Let's keep growing together.